We had a couple, some technical difficulties this Friday that we were working through, and so a few things were delayed on the website, but I believe we now have everything posted to the website and found in the grant platform, so you should have everything completely available to you at this point. That is not going to affect our timeline in any way, shape, or form. We're going to move forward with our same timeline on deadlines, decisions, and start dates for programs. So that should not delay anyone. But please let us know if for any reason you are still not able to access either a form or an application document. With that said, I am going to answer two questions that we received through email, and then I will open up the floor to any additional questions that come in. And the last thing I'll say is we also have a recorded presentation on the YouTube page that is a PowerPoint presentation from me and Nicole, in which we kind of detail all of the different funding opportunities this year and have more information there as well. I assume many of you have already access to that, but if you have not, I would certainly encourage you to do so. Okay, first question. For renewal application, if your total budget is not increasing, can you adjust your line items to accommodate a new part-time position for your program? The answer to this is no, and I'm going to tell you why the answer is no. Last year was the first year that we created a bit of a tiered approach where we did renewals and new applications separately, and it got and on different timelines. And while it worked in the end, it was a little messy on the way there. And one of the things that became complicated was different agencies were approaching new components they tried to work into their renewal application versus actually writing a new application. And so it became very hard to create a consistent standard for how we handled all of that. So we have to try to get everybody on the same page this year. A renewal application is only the things that you need to continue your program as it is currently operating. That means the level of operation you have with the same personnel. If you had things in a past application that was a one-time expense only, it is okay. I know you don't love it. I know this isn't, strategically what we all want to do. It's okay for you to ask for less money in your renewal application this year, knowing that that expense will not be recurring. You cannot just reallocate that to a new position. So we're really going to be looking at that personnel on your new applications and trying to match that up to your applications from last year. If you need to change the credential level for a position, but it's functionally operating the same way, I think there's some flexibility there. I understand you probably learn things as you go, but it's really intended to be for renewal applications being continuing your program as it's currently operating with the same personnel as it's currently operating. If you want to add on additional personnel, that should be a new application. And as you'll see in our timeline, we have aligned all of the funding decisions this year so that renewals and new applications are all going to be made in April. It's going to be a super fast process for us all to get there, but it's going to work well for this issue of being able to, I guess, if you're in a situation where you want to apply for new dollars as well as continuing your current operation in a renewal application. Second question, for the accelerator awards, can funds be used to purchase physical capital such as a building in its entirety? If so, are these funds on a reimbursement basis as well, or can funds be given up front to make a purchase of physical capital? So the first part of that is yes. For accelerator awards, physical capital projects can be requested, which could include potentially the purchase of a building. In terms of how we're going to contract that, we are going to work with each funded accelerator award on a case-by-case basis to develop the most appropriate contract type for what that project is. In some cases, there could be an advance payment upfront for a large purchase. In other cases, there might be an escrow type contract where funds are released into an escrow account, and then that escrow account is responsible for managing this distribution of funding per the project objectives. So again, because these will be more unique than the core program funding, we are going to work through those contracts on a case-by-case basis and develop contract language that is appropriate for the project. Okay, with those two questions answered, I don't have anything else in queue, so I will open the floor to those that want to ask. I'm going to start with the chat here. I see one just came in from the chat. And the question is, can we include 5% increase to renewals as we did last year to accommodate salary increases and COLA increases? Yes, you may. So that is the standard we are holding, is 5% increase year over year. Because this is a multi-year funding request now, you can kind of project from your baseline funding that you have right now, not for new positions, but to include and maintain your current operation. If you're anticipating there to be cost increases, you can include up to a 5% increase per year. So starting year one, 5%, and then you could add an additional 5% on that for year two, etc. So the new applications, I will let Nicole answer that in terms of how you find that.
So on our website, there is a tab called Funding Resources, and there is the link to the grant portal. So if you are somebody who has been awarded funding or has already created an account, you can just log in. If you do not have an account, you are able to create one. All of the applications and the rubrics are in PDF form, so you can review them on the website ahead of time. Or once you log into Foundant, all of those can be included for renewals or for new applications. So accelerator, abstract, and renewal is the actual order that it is on the website. And Jason, yeah, it's gonna.
Here, I'll do a quick screen share of that just so everybody can see that. This is r1planning.org/WCCMHB. And then when you get to that page, you'll see that there are buttons on the side, or different lists of pages on the side. Go to the funding resources page. And on that page, you should find all of the resources that you need for this program year, including the new strategic plan, the notice of funding opportunities, the timeline, a link to the grant seekers meeting recording, and the PowerPoint slides from that, the Q&A sessions, which we're hosting. We're in the middle of the first one right now. There is a second one that you can register for that will be 18th. Then there's a button for the actual grant portal, which is in Foundant. That's where you would go for the new application, and the renewal application for the accelerator award. You would first need to complete an interest in funding, which you click this interest in funding sign up button. You would complete an interest request first, and then if that were approved, you would then get a basically a link and a code to access that application in Foundant as well. So a lot of resources here, a lot to go through, but it's all in one place on this funding resources page on our website.
And should you review the website and you feel confused of how something is named or worded, or you're not sure if that's what you need to access, My email address is included in every application and evaluation rubric. In addition to Jason's contact information is also on the website. There's also mental health info that you can contact. So there's multiple ways to reach out to make sure that you're not wasting time, but we can help you access what you need.
Another question, if we are a renewal application, can we apply for 3 years of program funding? Yes, and that's what our expectation is that you're applying for 3 years of funding. We do not anticipate there to be a renewal funding application next year. We are moving to multi-year funding for multiple reasons, but mainly to reduce administrative burden on both us and the agencies that are applying for funding, and to provide you all more commitment and ability to hire staff and know that there's a little bit of stability there. So yes, we're moving to multi-year funding for the renewal applications, and the new application, those will be 3-year requests. Now, how we contract that is going to be based on history of program and compliance. And so some are going to get 3-year contracts and others may get 1-year contracts that can be renewed up to 3 years based on meeting objectives and compliance. Do you want to say something?
No, that's correct. And so there are some programs that are brand new to mental health board as of this program year. So applying for 3 years of funding, there might be something that the board would like to continue to monitor, which would allow there to be the 1 year a contract with a renewal at a later date.
Would there ever be a situation that it would be appropriate to renew one grant and apply for an additional new grant with different goals and expenses? Yes, you may do that. Everyone can do that. However, the one thing I would like to say about that, and this is not to discourage anyone in any way from doing this, but please understand that this is the first year in which for that core program funding, the amount that was awarded last year is the same that is to be awarded this year. So while it is a $60 million notice of funding, that's for 3 years. So that averages to $20 million per year, and $20 million is what the board awarded last year. So it's going to be much more competitive, I guess you could say, on the new applications this year, because essentially for anything new to be funded, that means something existing has to be reduced in funding or drop off, just by virtue of where we're at in the growth of the program and how much funding there is to allocate to those core programs. But that is not to discourage anyone from doing that. That is one of the reasons we have an abstract process. So you're not investing 100 hours into writing a proposal that maybe has a limited chance of being approved. The abstracts will be reviewed, and then only those that maybe have a high connection with our program gaps and a high likelihood of getting funded will be moved on to a full application.
And in the notice of funding opportunity, the very specific identified gaps are listed. So be mindful when you are completing a new application for those to align as closely as possible to remaining gaps.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that leads perfectly into my question. I'm a new potential grant seeker, and I'm with the Epilepsy Advocacy Network. And so that really was my question. Like, I would say our work doesn't directly relate to the specific ones that you identified, like the very serious mental health conditions and that sort of thing. Is it worthwhile for us to still go for it? There's a lot of data out there on the connections between epilepsy and mental health concerns, and I wasn't sure if that is something that might still be considered a gap for the area.
So always happy to have a offline conversation about maybe your specific program, but I'll just say, yeah, the target populations that are identified in the strategic plan really are the focus areas for funding. And those specific target like program gaps are going to be the main focus of any new program proposals. So, I don't want to, without knowing more, I don't want to say, no, no, you shouldn't apply, but I would say that what you see is really what those priorities are and what's going to be the focus of funding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to confirm, the accelerator award interest in funding form is due January 5th, correct? No. The accelerator form does not have a due date. Accelerator funding is going to be processed. I should say the requests will be processed as they are received. And I'm not going to say it's first come, first serve basis because there is a review process and some things might get rejected. So it's not as simple as just whoever gets there fastest. But once that funding, it's $10 million basically of surplus funding that was funding that didn't get spent in the first 3 years of tax collection, that's going to be put out for these one-time funding proposals to increase system capacity. As those decisions get made and those funding allocations are made or commitments are made, new applications will not be accepted once we reach that $10 million of funding allocation on accelerator. So there is no deadline for it. We're going to process them as we receive them.
The January 5th deadline you're referring to is for abstracts. So anybody that's completing a new application has from today until January 5th to complete an abstract application. If that abstract is selected by the board to move forward, you would be contacted. The decision would be made at the board meeting, but you'd be contacted to then fill out a new application afterwards.
Good questions this year also, by the way. Everyone's coming prepared. Who else? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more. So I guess going along with the interest form and then abstract. So does it go from the accelerator award interest form? If that's accepted, then do you do an abstract for a new application?
No. So if
No.
you think about them as kind of three buckets, so accelerator awards are an entirely different process. So accelerator awards are ones that have the interest form online. So to make sure that your proposal is in line with what the board is requesting, there's a form for you to fill out. If the board votes for you to continue moving forward with your accelerator award application, you will be given a password and founded to complete that. The
Gotcha.
second bucket of funding is abstract that you complete online. You can complete it today if interested. The abstract application is already live, and so you would complete that. The board would vote for you to move forward with a full application, which would include new programming, closing remaining gaps, things like that. The third funding opportunity is continued funding if you are somebody that has already been funded to remain consistent with your current programming for the next 3 years. Does
Very
that
good.
make it more
Yep.
clear?
Crystal, awesome.
And then to answer the next question that hasn't been asked, can we apply for all three? Yes, you may. But again, understand, that on the core program funding, that's $60 million over 3 years is for renewal applications and new applications. The accelerator program has the $10 million, which once that's all awarded, that will be one-time funding and that will then be done.
And some of the accelerator funding and the abstract funding have different tiers or levers or different whatever you want to refer to them as, to also save time. So we don't want people to spend a significant amount of time completing an accelerator award application or completing a full application, 14 pages, if it's not something that the board is interested in receiving. So it seemed a little confusing kind of the way that it's set up, but when you think about the context of kind of a first step and a second step, it makes it easier.
Any other questions? Okay, last call. Any questions? You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Are you guys available at all after this for like individual questions, programming questions?
Yeah,
Is it possible?
we will do individual calls. We would like to address most things in kind of these open forums, but we understand some of you might have specific things about your program that you want to discuss more privately, because you are to some degree in collaboration with one another, and also in some degree in competition with one another. So we will take those. I appreciate if you just submit an email kind of request to schedule something, just so you understand our role. We are not the decision makers. We don't review the grants on the staff side. We don't make a direct recommendation to the board about what they should fund. We're facilitating a process, and we're providing technical assistance to make sure you understand all of the, as we call them, kind of buckets of funding, or the different layers of the process. So happy to provide technical assistance to anyone, but definitely not in a position where we can provide like help you figure out a program proposal more specifically. We just want to make sure everybody has the information they need to appropriately apply for funding. So with that being said, Elliot, yeah, you can reach out to us and we can schedule a brief Zoom call or something to that nature.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we've got another one in the chat here. If we stick with the same budget as last year, can we move line items around this year, provided it's not additional staff? Yeah, that's appropriate. I'm not suggesting that, you know, nothing new can be. If you learned last year that, hey, we had $500 for supplies last year, and we're anticipating this year it's going to be $700, you know, sure, that's appropriate. We just want to make sure that everybody's following the kind of the heart of the rule, which is that renewal funding is not for program expansion. And sometimes when we put in that, you can ask for up to 5%, people try to be creative with how they put expansion into the proposals. So just as long as you're really sticking to the heart of the rule, which is it's not for expansion. If there are little fluctuations and line items here and there, you know, that's going to be okay as long as your baseline amount doesn't exceed that 5%.
And for programs that in not this current cycle, but the cycle before, if you submitted a budget and that was what was approved in the next grant cycle, you asked for budget modifications because you realized you only allocated $200 for training, but there's specialty trainings that require $2,000. And in the program year, you reallocated that through a budget modification with the board. The board does reference changes over time. So those most accurate budget reflections would be appropriate to reference it for any line item changes that you need to make.
Okay, any other questions? No, I'm going to have to do another last call, so we got 2 more.
And if anybody needs assistance if you're completing an application and you want somebody else to collaborate, you are able to add collaborators. If you need assistance in doing this, you can reach out to me. I can add users to your application. However, to make it easy for people to complete, just make sure to let us know.
Okay, well, with that, we will end our first question and answer session. Remember, we have another one Thursday of next week. So if you do, you know, go to bed tonight, you wake up at 2 in the morning, you're like, shoot, I forgot to ask that question. Sign back up. We'll see you again Thursday next week. And again, if you've got just kind of a offline question you want to shoot over to us through email, that's okay too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.